Welcome to the Golden State Media Concepts Life and Happiness Podcast, the show that takes you on a journey of exploration. We'll discuss tried and true methods alongside the latest trends of how to best live your life to its fullest and happiest. From psychology to meditation, science to self-help books, the GSMC Life and Happiness Podcast will help you to discover what makes you happy and how you can live life being the best you possible.
Hello and welcome back, everyone, to the Life and Happiness Podcast run by the GSMC Podcast Network. This is your host, Steven Solorzano, and let's get back into this week's episode. What's the most interesting thing that's happened this week? What's come to mind is the Zack Snyder cut of the Justice League movie is Zack Snyder, not Jack Snyder. It's finally out and it's on HBO Max. Are any of you big DC fans out there? I much more prefer the Marvel movies, though I know there are some diehards for I think some people like Man of Steel, and Wonder Woman is the best movie of the bunch, but the rest, Wonder Woman 1984, Aquaman, Justice League, and, well, Batman v Superman were, I don't know, they left like a sour taste in my mouth. They weren't horrible, but they weren't great movies either. Question. Have you guys ever seen some of the older DC movies, like the original Superman or like Batman Begins, Batman Returns, like those much older ones? What did you guys think of those? Has DC fallen far from where they used to be? And are you guys excited for the new Zack Snyder Justice League cut? Do you think it's going to be worth it? We'll see. I'll probably go check out clips on YouTube. But other than that, nothing wildly popped out to me of the news this week so far. Well, maybe the next few weeks will be more interesting. So let's get back into what's going to be the theme of this week. We're going to be talking about the hero's journey. So question of the day, because this all relates to it. What do you guys think of gaming? Video gaming specifically. The reason why I ask is because I learned about something called 2B2T. And what it is a Minecraft server. And for those of you who don't play much video games, what that means is it's a place where people can connect online to play the game Minecraft. And it creates a whole world. And all these people are playing on this world. And they've been playing on it for 10 years. That's how old this server is. And the thing about it is there are no rules. Everything is allowed. So if someone creates a structure, you are allowed to go and destroy the structure. Now, it doesn't say people will like it, and many conflicts have arisen because of others going to grief and doing things like that. But the reason why I think that's unique is because the way the culture of this server has evolved, it's almost like a glimpse into human history. Because factions arise, urban myths arise. It's incredibly interesting. I've never seen anything like this. When you listen to the players that have been there 5, 6, 7+ years, you hear the pride in the things that they've done. And the people that they've met in the time, like the heroes that rose up, they talk about them almost like actual myths and legends that we hear in stories, like the accomplishments that certain people do. And these stories are passed down from one set of players to the next set as more and more people go in and join. And the reason why I think it's notable is because it's almost as if these people are living their own hero's journey out here in this Minecraft server. So that's why we're going to go that's why we have this theme of the hero's journey. Because the way I see it is everyone is living through their own story, and it's your choice whether or not to be the hero. And so our last segment today is going to be my 7 reasons why I think you should be the hero of your own story, and only you can decide to do so. So now let me relate it back to the question of the day. And the reason why I ask, what do you guys think of gaming, is because, well, gaming's kind of looked down upon. Like, I'm sure many of you heard the stories in the news across the many decades. People were saying it back when Mortal Kombat first came out back in the early 90s. And they say it nowadays with whatever newfangled game shows up, that video games cause violence and murder and all these other things, which isn't proven. And also that people who game a lot are kind of looked down on. It's more like, well, you should do something more productive with your time. And you know what? It kind of makes sense, because unless you're making money from playing games, it doesn't really benefit you all that much if you waste all your time on it. And yes, there are those select few that go and are incredibly successful with what they do with their gaming side of their life. But just like for sports, just like for anything, those are few and far between. It's not everyone. And as a result, gaming has this negative reputation. So when I come across this server called 2B2T, it's unique in so many different ways. Part of the draw has to be the no rules, no holds barred kind of aspect of the community, where everything can go, And well, part of what arises is the different, as I mentioned, the different factions, the destruction. It's gotten to the point where you can literally do archaeology on these different servers. You can go out in a random direction, search around, dig, and literally pull up history of this server, of these people. And you can piece together what they were trying to do at this time. And it's the type of passion that you see from the people who are on this community online. It's unlike what you would encounter in most places. It's rather wondrous. People live out their lives in the game as the heroes that they wish they could be, and even if they're not the star, they find their roles. Some people work as the maintenance work people, making sure all the infrastructure of the server is intact, so new players and actually every player can have easy access to the huge swaths of territory which are within this one server. Think about it. For those of you who are unfamiliar with Minecraft and what I'm describing, think about it as the unexplored frontier. Think about when people were the pioneers were going out to the unclaimed territory. When many American settlers started moving west, making names for themselves, towns would spring up, violence would ensue because people would compete, and because of how wild it was, the rule of law was rather weak. It's like the days of tribal warfare back in the past. It's something we don't have anymore. Not really. Because if you think about it, there are no more frontiers, except for space, but that one's a little bit different. And space travel is not efficient nearly or accessible enough in a way so that the average person can go and make something themselves in the unknown in the big black sky out there. And nations are relatively in peace. There's no conflict. There's no wars, really. Well, unless you're paying attention to specific parts of the world. But nowadays, it's kind of expected that a nation will hold its territory relatively easily for just a foreseeable future. Like, we don't expect the United Kingdom just shrinking randomly because France is like, hey, I want a piece of it. That just doesn't happen anymore. So, that sense of adventure, the call to adventure, isn't present in the way that it used to be. And you know what? It still can be, in some ways, because you could leave your hometown, go somewhere new, constantly travel, make a name for yourself in whatever industry you want to do. But for a lot of people, they find the virtual world as the place where they can start that hero's journey. And in some ways, it's a lot easier to go do that there, where, you know what, maybe there's less competition. Because think about it. If in this Minecraft server, to be 2T, when it was starting out, it was just like 20 guys. And then it was, 30, 40, and now it's in the hundreds. But that's across 10 years, and you see the growth happen. And names are much more recognizable in those more tight-knit groups. Versus if you come out here, there's 8 billion of us? How easy is it to become someone who's like a tableside name? Think Donald Trump, even before everything started, his name was known all over the place. Or Michael Jackson, or think Elon Musk, or Bill Gates, or Bill Nye the Science Guy, or just think about all these people whose names are known just to the average kind of person. So that kind of esteem, that kind of clout is what people can get on these servers, like 2B2T, and their names are passed down in history. And I'm starting with that specific server because that's the one I found recently. But it doesn't just extend there. It doesn't just stop there. It goes to any... I think this extends to any gaming community where there's a large interaction between lots of people and there is some level of competition. Because what also comes to mind is fighting game tournaments where players who have continued to succeed over and over have their names passed down through time. Pokemon is another example like this, where famous battlers in those battling online communities, competitive Pokemon, they have their own Hall of Fame of famous players who've done super well across the years. And World of Warcraft, there's StarCraft, there's so many different games like this, and these cultures just arise out of it, and it's almost uniquely human. Seeing how these kind of hierarchies form naturally. I've had this kind of pointed out to me before. It's like young boys, they'll kind of pick out one of the boys to follow. And actually, in the same scenarios, it kind of happens where it's anywhere between teenagers to grown adults doing this kind of thing. They also choose people to follow, choose men to follow. Because also, I don't know why specifically, but in these communities, it is predominantly male. I don't know exactly what that means. Maybe it has to do with male nature being inherently more aggressive. But, something which stirs a desire to compete, desire to rise to the top, to seek places to do that. But I'm not sure. I don't know. I don't really know what that means. But generally, it's all these kind of forms where they put themselves together with all the passion they have. Like if you've seen some of the things they've been able to create in this world, when they're creating and not destroying, it's rather beautiful. Like if it was something like that brought into the real world, you would be astounded by what they did. Like think wonders on par with something like the Eiffel Tower, just in a digital game, and the same kind of mindset you would think people have of back in the medieval ages when you would have these massive Gothic cathedrals, and it was you worked on it, your dad worked on it, your grandfather worked on it, his father worked on it. Like 6 generations worked on this cathedral, and all of them over decades and decades made something so beautiful. And that same almost the same kind of spirit lives on in these people who you would take 20 guys and they spend a month constructing something which does seem beautiful. Like it's so wondrous, the type of things and the colors and the vibrant things all these people gather together to create. So, is it worth less because it's on a video game platform? I guess that's the main question I'm curious about, because I think people should live their journeys to become the hero of their story. But people look down on different ways that you do so. So I guess part of this episode is going to be we're going to talk about the status of different paths one could take to become the hero of their own story, and see whether or not they actually hold weight, whether it's something that really should be respected, or maybe, we should give it a second look. Maybe someone putting their heart and soul in something like video gaming might be something worth respecting a little bit more than we used to, So we'll get back into this in the next segment, but I'm looking forward to exploring this idea with you further. And I'll see you all soon.
Are you tired of the same old news? Are you sick of the seemingly endless political spin and negativity? The GSMC America's Still Beautiful podcast is a weekly news podcast covering all the top positive and uplifting news stories. We cover stories that will inspire, uplift, and remind you of the good in the world. Tune into the Golden State Media Concepts America's Still Beautiful podcast to get all the great and positive news stories of today. Download the GSMC America's Still Beautiful podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
Welcome back to the Life and Happiness podcast, run by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Steven Solorzano, and let's get back into this one. So, the theme of the day is going to be becoming the hero of your own story. And what that kind of entails is, how can you become the most excellent you can be? What's going to bring the most passion out of you? And I started this off with a conversation on video gaming because I found a community on the internet called 2B2T who are players of Minecraft on a server that's 10 years old, and it has such a rich history from the people that put their hearts and souls into this community, and you can really feel it in ways which you rarely get from people nowadays. I've kind of mentioned before that I think there's a lack of meaning in society as it is now. People do their things, but they don't know why they're doing them. They kind of just going through the motions. And it's the very few and far between of us who actually has felt when you're kind of in the right place at the right time, everything works together and you feel like you're doing the right thing. When everything aligns. And I think that even though it's in a video game, I think people find that, at least, or get close to it, some aspect of it within those communities that they form. I would invite many of you to go and check out the builds, the bases that are on 2B2T, and how lovely they are. How much effort and passion that you see in people, and listen to the stories of them. I would recommend Fit MC on YouTube and listen to how he conveys with wonder about all the different things which have occurred on this journey he's been on for 7 years. That's not something you get that often. And the reason why I want to emphasize this is our society largely has kind of, the way I'd put it, a level of status depending on what you do, right? So doctors are above plumbers. lawyers are above teachers. Well, maybe, depending which circles you are. And like everyone's above the garbage man. And even the garbage man is above a salesman. I kind of went over that a little bit a few episodes ago in my intro. That there's a hierarchy of essentially what work is the most glorious, of what work is the most desirable, what work is the most honored. And I don't know if that's necessarily the right way to look at it. Because that would imply that the right path is to go be the lawyer, to go be the doctor, to go be in those top positions. And where I'll admit those are very lucrative paths. And they take a lot of effort too. The reason why I'm hesitant to kind of agree with those wide swaths of opinions based on different jobs of how they should be viewed and respected is the fact that, you know what? Not everyone can be a lawyer. Not everyone can be a doctor. Not everyone can be a president. And if you want to view humans as equal, at the very least equal in creation, and more so, I think the equality in this sense is that we're all free to become the person who we could be. We all have access to that same potential. And by same, I don't mean, we can go to the exact same position. I mean, there's an amazing height, an upper limit to the type of person we could become. And you know what? We do it in different ways because you're unique and I'm unique. We all have our natures to contend with. But to become that hero, to become the hero of our own story, the paths will vary wildly. And I think what the end goal is on all of those paths is excellence. So, think about it this way. Who cares really if you're the doctor, if you're unknown, you're bad at your job, no one really will remember you. It's the ones which have truly excelled in their field, which are the ones that remembered. And that's the same thing for anything. Sports, tech, video games, all of that. It's just like in 2B2T, it's the ones who have really become something, and anyone else can notice that those are the people that get remembered. And I think it's because they tap into something deeper. And I want to talk about, I guess it reminds me of something in one of Martin Luther King's speeches. I think this was an I Have a Dream speech, but I'm not sure. It might be from the mountaintop. That might be the speech. And where he was saying this idea where if you're going to be a lawyer, or if you are a lawyer, you got to be the best lawyer you can be. If you're going to be a doctor, be the best doctor you're going to be. If you're going to be a teacher, be the best teacher you can be. And if you're going to be a street sweeper, then be the best street sweeper you can be. That all that work is honorable before, in his words, it would have been the Lord. But I guess in the sense that I want to describe it, and even though I would agree with that sentiment, I would say, I think someone putting all that effort in, when you visibly see that passion, that's just something that should be respected. So long as it's oriented towards what's good. And I know that's vague. That is vague, but I do think work is a noble. Work in any sense is a noble virtue. And I already talked about this idea where I don't think the status of it materially matters that much. Because who cares if the lawyer makes 10 times as much as a policeman? The policeman is the person who's out there risking his life every day to make sure that those who want to abuse the rest of the citizens are held accountable before the law. They're supposed to be there to protect us and keep the game fair. And that work is just, at the very least, just as noble as the guy who went through all that effort in school to get his law degree and now is being successful there. Like, I I've become very disillusioned with the idea that the status that comes along with whatever profession you choose. I don't think that status actually defines the person or the actual value of the work. What matters is if they can do the work well. And it's even more wondrous when they're happy doing it, when it brings out everything that they have to offer. Okay, so here's I need to tell a story that goes along with this kind of message. Because I'm kind of trying to explain this idea, but it's not personal enough. I want to explain what I've seen with this kind of thing. So, I've mentioned how I went to a school which was largely study-based, and you would have people who would put all their effort into getting as high a grade as possible, but then you would also see them be dead inside and be lacking meaning and be so damn tired because they just spent all night studying, they got no sleep, but they got that 101%. Oh, that was totally worth it. And they're suffering for it. And I got disillusioned with that, and I was always more drawn to the quieter people. The ones who, the outcast type people, you know? And I'll think of one specific. There's this girl. She was very pretty. And she was incredibly quiet. And whenever I spoke with her, she was one of the sweetest people I ever met. And it was, what always touched me was when she would show the work that she would do outside of school. Because she was an artist. She had been an artist for many years. And you could see in the things that she's doing how beautiful the works of art she was making, and the happiness in her eyes in showing those to someone that actually appreciated and could see how much of her was in these same works. With that specific to art, what's another thing? Here's one which you may not you may find a little odd. There's another friend I knew. This is more specific. So the reason why I held gripes against the people who were focusing much on studies, because I could tell, was that this wasn't them. This wasn't the thing that did it for them. They were doing it because they thought they had to do it. But then there are the few who it actually comes naturally from them. This is what they want to do, and they're incredibly amazing at this. And this one example, he was on one of my academic team, and he was brilliant. He was extremely good at math and physics, not so much in social cues, but you sacrifice somewhere to get those kinds of talents, And I just found this hilarious. We just won a competition, and we're at the Pyology all getting together. And since I was a captain, actually no, this is before I was captain. I guess I was just waiting with everyone, helping to pack up, that kind of thing, And he's like on his phone, and he pulls me over. He's like, Steven, look at this. And he's so excited. He's like visibly like super excited. And he has a mathematical proof on his phone. And he's like explaining it to me. And it had something to do with the geometry, but this was not normal geometry. I believe it was in 3 dimensions. It might have been in 4. Because that's how advanced he was in his mathematics, so much he loved these kinds of things. And he was explaining to me with such vigor and happiness to it that I just couldn't help but be amazed. And he was by far like the best one there at mathematics. And that's because that truly came from him. His hero story was following that path and what made him passionate. And you know what? A mathematician, PhD, that wouldn't get as much respect as, the brain surgeon. It'll still get respect, but it's not on the same status level of the brain surgeon. So, I guess I don't agree with that. I don't agree with the separation. I don't think the hero's journey is limited by or the actual goodness which emanates from your own hero's journey is affected by the status the society gives specifically to certain fields. Like blue-collar jobs. I give a lot of respect to those people. Even though people nowadays, the ones who don't have a degree, are kind of looked down upon. But they do so much and they're around us all the time. I actually work with union workers. Think about those plumbers, electricians, though people work on our cable lines, all those people. And they're doing hard jobs, and ultimately, even then, specific to that, I don't think it's the job that matters. I think it's more, can you bring out your best there? And also, does it allow you to be responsible for your own family? Does it allow you to be independent? Does it allow you to do the things which, well, grown adults should be doing? And that's essentially taking on as much responsibility as they can. Because I think it's only down that path where we choose to be responsible. I only think it's down that specific path which forms us into that legendary hero inside all of us. Because what's needed most is discipline. We've talked about human nature before and individual natures. And I return to this idea that it's always a struggle with yourself. Because they're the things you want to do which aren't productive and won't let you succeed, but they'll feel good in the moment. The way I could describe it is, well, I just had a long day of work. I actually really sincerely did have a long day of work. And then I had to go record this podcast. And a big part of me was like, you know what? Your bed's right there. It would have been extremely nice just to go lay down, rest, and knock out. But no, I got my responsibilities. There are the things I want to do. So I got to rein in that part of me so I can get back out here and give you guys a good show and express the ideas which I sincerely do work on to. Well, I do think that they're important, and I think they're real, as far as I understand what real is. So we'll continue this in the next segment. And don't forget, last segment, we've got the 7 reasons why I think you should be the hero of your own story. And I'll see you guys in the next one.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Hello and welcome back to the Life and Happiness Podcast, run by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Steven Solorzano, and let's get back into it. So, the whole theme of today has been the hero's journey. And now I'm going to circle back to why I think this is so important. So, think about all the stories you connect with. Why we love stuff like Spider-Man. Or like just more in general, underdog stories. The person who starts, against the world, not a chance at that they'll come out on top, but they struggle, they fight, they improve, and by the skin of their teeth, they just make it on top at the end. Why does that resonate with people? And it's not just you and me nowadays. Think about all the stories that we know of, that we still connect with. The myths of Hercules, Perseus, thinking about Horus, the Egyptian mythology stuff. Think about Beowulf. Think about Thor in the actual Norse mythology. Let's go in actual literature. Harry Potter, Percy Jackson, all the comic heroes. What? It's everywhere. Even just real people we admire. Think about Michael Jordan, the most famous basketball player who he got cut from his high school team back in the day. We innately love stories like that. Why? It's just something almost universal. Because think about the oldest hero's journey story. Well, it's more, and it's sometimes not every hero's journey works out because, Gilgamesh, the Epic of Gilgamesh, the oldest story that we have in the books, unless you want to make arguments for certain stories in the Bible, it's another one of those where you don't necessarily see his rise, but you see his adventures overcoming adversity. And all of it is, it's a character, they have their strengths, they have their flaws, and they run into challenges which push them to greater heights or break them. Either way, we find those kinds of tales compelling. So I think if you were to read the writings of Carl Jung, which is maybe beyond some of you, it is very complex and hard to understand. Or someone like Jordan Peterson, who's much easier to understand, much more down to earth. Or what other examples I don't know that kind of go along this, or just if you're an avid fan of literature, I guess that's the best way to put it, or any form of media. Seriously, you'll see that the common themes is we believe that every single person has that power to do something about it. And the next thing to do is turn that idea on our own lives, to see ourselves as the heroes of our own story, not to embody what someone else did. Because you know what? There are heroes out there. There are role models, things we can look onto, things we copy when we're learning. When we're learning how to form ourselves out in the world. But ultimately, you're not them. I'm never gonna be I'm never gonna be a George Washington. I'm never gonna be an Abraham Lincoln. The only person that I can be is me. And it's my job to take my nature, to understand myself in a way, and with the effort required to mold it into what it really could become. And you can imagine that. Just think about all the things you knew that if you stopped doing, you would improve. And imagine that person who actually did do all those things. What would they look like? How different are they from you? How much greater did they rise? And my point to all this is that's still you. That's possible. But only if you choose to do it. And I do think I think it's been really hard for a lot of people to do that in their own world, in real life. And a big reason why I think gaming is looked down upon is, I think, the well-perceived notion that it's people running away to escape into an easier world so that they could become that person somewhere at least. And you know what? There are those people who can turn it into something real too by being able to profit from it and earn themselves a living. But ultimately, everyone is seeking that. And especially men, especially boys. That is especially true for us because of our more aggressive nature. It's actually unrelated it's semi-related. A big reason which kind of shows this is, so if you look at relative poverty, it's measured by something called the Gini coefficient. And what that means is, what's been found about it is the higher the Gini coefficient, the higher the violent crime rate. So that includes murder, violent robbery, rape, all those things. And when that happens is when there's high amounts of relative poverty. What that means is the poor people right next to the incredibly rich people. Because what that means, especially for young men, is that there is no way to rise to the top. There is no... It's incredibly difficult at the very least. So a lot of the reactions is, if I can't win within the system, I'm going to just damage the system and find my way that way. And that is a result from, our more aggressive nature, which you can also find some evidence for. Well, with, I think it's 3/4 of all people in prison are men. I'm pretty sure about that. I looked at the FBI statistics not too long ago, and that was the last thing I checked. So that's just to reinforce the idea that men have that more aggressive nature and are more susceptible to the inability to pursue our own journey and become the hero that we look up to when we're growing up. Like looking at those Clint Eastwood movies, if you're a fan of Westerns, or modern day MCU, wanting to become that Tony Stark. There's consequences to not being able to do that, to not follow that instinct, that almost universal human story. And I think the dissonance which happens when you're not following that path, when you're not making something of yourself, when you're not growing, is what leads to a lot of the negative emotions that and thoughts that we've discussed before. So, a big thing that we gotta do, or I guess, I think a big thing which results from that is people need to be encouraged more. And not in a superficial way. So, here's an interesting thing. So, the self-esteem stuff where you just tell someone they're great just the way they are? I'm one who would disagree. And what's interesting, I don't know what conclusions you would want to draw from this, but they found that the studies have found that the highest self-esteem is easily found in those who commit murder, because they see themselves as above everyone else, so valuable, and they're much more willing to take a life because of it. I don't think you should be satisfied with the person you are now. I think that just makes you stagnant, makes you a little bit arrogant. Well, you should... And also, it cuts against that humility, which I talked about, that it should bring so much peace to your mind. If you're just willing to accept that you're not all that you could be, that you're missing some stuff, it just takes a big weight off your shoulders. And it makes it easier to go ask for help, to reach out to learn from someone else. So, what I mean by encouragement... It's not just, telling someone they're great as they are. It's giving more space for people to explore the actual benefits within their own nature, the talents which we don't largely discuss. Think about it. How many times have we talked about in the culture where, music programs are getting cut from school, shop classes, machine classes, home ec, all these things, all these extra programs, which, we want our kids to learn. I would have liked having more of those opportunities. Luckily, there were a good amount of those opportunities in my school, but I know not everyone has them. Yet, we do nothing, really, as everything gets reduced to the mathematics and English, which, yes, are necessary, but are not everyone's path, and leave a lot of kids out there, and results in a lot of adults out there who don't know what they want to do, and were told by the system that they're worthless if they didn't follow the path which was told for them to do. That any other deviation from it wasn't right. So, you're telling people by not following the hero's journey that they set out for them, that they were never going to matter in the grand scheme of things. And those are bad messages out there. Those are incredibly depressing messages out there. And it makes, I've seen this in the kids that I saw back in high school, my peers, that people give up. Humans really do run on the feedback that we get from other people. And if you're just constantly telling someone that you're not going to matter if you don't do the things we say, but they don't have it's not in their nature to be good at those things that you say, then they're just going to be like, well, why should I do this? Like, what? I guess I just choose I don't matter. Because that's the only path that I have, when reality could be doing so much more. There's this story someone told me where this guy, he ran into many kids, these African-American kids in the street, and they were in gang stuff. They're in violent crimes. That's a culture that they had grown up around in the inner city which they lived. And he showed them that they could earn much more money and do more for their family just by selling t-shirts. And that way they're cleaning up their act, and they can actually become kind of successful. And he showed them around what they could do for themselves. They're willing, if they learned to sell, and if they wanted to put themselves out there. And it was a dramatic change on those kids. And, well, it made their lives better. That's just really no other way I can think to put it. He gave them the path that they had through school was shot for them, and they thought there was no other way than to go outside the system. But when someone revealed that, there's a way for you to succeed, a way for you to become someone that's still responsible, was still admirable within society. It's just not what it doesn't have the status of the other things, but it's still a way you can honorably take care of your own family. And they took onto it. They loved it. They wished they had those opportunities. But people don't learn those kinds of ways. We're limiting so much of what is considered ideal that we're cutting people's hero's journeys short. And we're squashing the potential, the amazing gains we could have if you just let people be people, let people become the people that they know they can be. And this is why I have so much. I don't have the highest view of humanity as a whole, but I have incredible respect for individuals. I have incredible respect for the potential in all of them, of what they could bring out. And I do my best to try to live by example, try to bring out as much of myself as I can. Because I've seen that's the best way to show someone that they have that exact same power within them. To show that by showing that it's possible. And by the encouragement, it's just when you see the glimpse of that amazing person inside, the hero just waiting to be unleashed, give it some love. This has worked for me in dates. I ask pointed questions to try to figure out what makes this girl tick, what her likes or dislikes are, what is it that really motivates her. And once you find the right question and you get them talking, once they feel they can open up, and not only open up about it, but you enjoy hearing that part of them. It creates such a deep connection, and will likely keep it going for a long time. And it's not just for relationships, it's just with people in general. So we'll get back into this, but I really do love talking about this idea. It's the wondrous things you can see with people, and it's the good side of them. It's the amazing side of them. One that we unleash far too little in our modern day and age. But we'll get back into this. So 7 reasons why I think you should follow your own hero's journey. And we'll get back into this in this next segment. See you back soon.
The Golden State Media Concepts Travel Podcast, the show that gives you advice on everything travel. We explore places you've always wanted to go, as well as giving tips for traveling in those places. We'll give you advice on the best sites for travel tips, information, and discounts. Join us as we travel the world, explore cultures, and meet new people. The Golden State Media Concepts Travel Podcast has got you covered. Download the GSMC Travel Podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
Hello and welcome back to the Life and Happiness Podcast. This is the last segment of this episode. We're going to be talking about the 7 reasons why you should take on your own hero's journey, and the ways if you do it, if you single-mindedly aim at the best you could be. These are the types of things. These are the ways it will affect you. And we're culminating with this to give a close to this. It's almost like the hero's journey is the ultimate wrap-up of all the things that we've been talking about so far in the Life and Happiness podcast. And all of it comes down to this, essentially. The first thing that it's going to be is it takes I can't into I can. And what I mean by that is the first step in becoming the hero of your own story is choosing to believe that you can. To believe that you have the volition in your own, that you have the authority to decide where your life will go. You can't go down this path without doing so. Everything else is essentially victimizing yourself, believing everything is out of your control. And if the thing about many things like that, and actually we talked about this in the last episode, all it is a mentality. If you tell yourself you can't do something, you already lost. Every single time you do it, you need to believe that you can. And also, well, it's not just telling yourself that you can. You need to stoke that fire inside you to have it roar every time you make an attempt. And starting down the path of your own hero's journey will activate that inside of you. And it's transformative. It makes that smile that you wear for the world something real. Something that people can feel. It's not something fake. And that only happens when you choose to believe it. And you have to keep reaffirming it every single time. Because you know what? There's always going to be doubts. Your mind's going to always want to tell you you can't. So you always have to fire back at it with I can. And staying consistent on this journey will keep that habit up and will take you far. It might give you the strength you need to make that next step forward, even though it hurts. So this next one, number 2. It'll take you unexpected places. When you're seeking ways that you can make things better, seeking ways that might be good, I think of one of the oldest stories of the call to adventure, the start of the hero's journey, which is the story of Abraham in the Bible, where God essentially tells this 80-year-old dude who's been living with his father, go. This is the direction I'm telling you. Now go. And he does. He just listens. And he encounters famine, he encounters drought, sickness, wars, and he becomes all the better. He rises up to the challenge, becomes a hero. He didn't have an idea of what he was going to expect. And But he went along anyway and kept aiming for the best he could be along that path. And it brought him riches, and it made him into a powerful man for choosing to take on these challenges with the best of his ability. And I've kind of found that too. In my life, it's always been the things that I didn't expect that became the greatest adventures. I didn't think I would choose Science Olympiad as the thing I wanted to do, but someone told me I should do it, said it would be fun. I said, why not? And it became the greatest thing that I did in high school. And I actually find this a lot of the time, regardless of what people say about the people they married. Most of the time it's like, I didn't expect it to happen. It kind of just, you fall in love. It just hits you. And then there's no looking back after that, I guess. Like, the relationship people are the happiest. It's not like they planned it out or anything like that. It just happens. And I think going on this journey will open up many more of those doors. And it's not just open it up. It'll make you willing to take that chance. Because like I said in the last episode, who knows what's going to happen? And the sky's the limit. You just got to take that first step. So number 3. Part of the hero's journey is that you're going to have to deal with your flaws. You're going to have to work them out. You're going to have to work honestly with who you are and bear that on the world. And what that's going to do is people will recognize the genuinity of what you're doing, how real it is, how you're bearing the truth of yourself upon everyone. And people will react to you in a way which they'll be more willing to open up with you as well. Think about it. Like, if someone's hiding secrets from you, are you going to be willing to trust them? Are you going to be willing to let them know the down and dirty? Or if you know that they blab or things like that, if they're underhanded? No. But people get very comfortable around someone who's open. Like, they're telling who they are, their life story. And when someone's on that hero's journey, they're constantly doing that. And it's not necessarily telling everyone about it, but it carries that vibe carries out through all the actions that they take, the honesty of it, and they keep single-mindedly moving towards that ideal within all of us, and people recognize that, and especially your close friends. For the people, and it's not just the random people you meet that will recognize that within you. For the people that you let in and you let them be a part of that journey, even slightly, it'll form those deeper bonds and make those conversations a lot more worth it, a lot more interesting, and cathartic is the word that comes to mind. We deal with so much pain out there. It's nice to have someone that we can open up to about who we are and have them be able to listen and not think worse of us because of it. And number 4, you'll draw people like you. It's not just that you'll have deeper bonds with the ones you're already close with or with the random people you meet. It's more like, I've already mentioned this idea, like-minded people attract. So as you're moving on that path of success, you'll draw more people to you who are also on that path of success. You'll get rivals. You'll get people you can learn from. You'll get mentors. It's wondrous what happens to you once you start down that path of making yourself essentially valuable to others. Because part of this journey is polishing up what's excellent about you and make it greater, while also working on the flaws and making them lesser. So none of this is to say that, just follow what you love, because what you love isn't necessarily what you're good at, sadly. Like, I may love baseball, but I am not a professional baseball player. I instead have to focus on what I am good at, foster what my nature has innately, and turn it to something amazing. So, to everyone else, it's the same kind of idea. we have things that we love. We're not necessarily good at those things, but our own hero's journey lies in a path of how we can become the most excellent person we could be. And all the people that you'll draw will help you a great deal along that path. And you know what? They may be that opportunity, that unexpected opportunity, which could take you who knows where. And I wonder what that kind of special combination would be, Maybe they're the one. Maybe they're that business partner, and you'll actually be able to make something successful off of it. But who knows? It's all up to you. And number 5, you become tougher as a result of all this. And I'm sure you realize that because, as we described, this isn't an easy journey. I'm describing all the highlights, but it's grueling because you know what? You'll also lose people. People will try to chide you because people don't like admitting their own flaws, and a lot of people find it easier that when they see someone succeeding, they're just going to bring them down. Bullies, that's the first thing that comes to mind. That's what they do literally all the time. That's like their MO. So, that's something people will have to deal with. And you know what? We're not strong enough alone to deal with it. And that's why all the good people that we meet along the way, and it's important to have those close friends as we do it. But in the process of that journey, we'll learn to bear more of that weight against us the further that we go. And I think the pinnacle, the hardest place to reach, but sometimes a necessary strength to have, is when everyone else is against you. And I think when you're fostering that hero inside you, in the end, you'll have the strength to stand against the world alone. But we'll see. We'll see. And number 6, it's not just that you'll draw people in. People will look up to you. People will want to be you or be like you. And that's a interesting emotion to draw out from others. Like, I remember back when I was captain of Science Olympiad, I drew a lot of respect from the team. They wouldn't say it openly in front of me, but, I would hear whispers from them, and I think the funniest thing would be when their parents would be telling me how great a captain I was from their own kids. Like, that's what the kids would be saying. And it's not to raise me up. It's more like I was just trying to do the best that I could. And I always focus on that. There's always so much better. There's so many things which I feel like I failed at. I feel which could have been improved upon. But the work ethic that I put in is what drew people's respect. They could see that I was working on it every single day, and people listened. People took the words I said with more authority, or with more believability, I guess would be another word to use. And the other thing is, because they have that respect, it brings opportunities. People are willing to include me in more chances. And I think that respect is incredibly important. And it puts you at ease. It makes you trust that you are doing kind of the right thing. At least you're in the right direction. If people are willing to acknowledge you, at the very least, as an equal. And I do think the hero's journey does that. I think fostering that part of yourself makes everyone else be like, wow, I wish I could scale that mountain like he did. Damn. It's just so impressive. So, that's another good thing about this path, if you're one willing to take it. And I think the final thing, and this is reiterating general concepts as we've been doing this whole time, this is the path that makes life worth living. Just think about it. Imagine seeing how far you've come, all the things that you've done, and believing that you have so much more in you to do, that everything has just been a taste so far. And there are greater heights above you, so long that you put the effort in. And you know what? It's terrifying at first. It hurts. It's hard. And I think most people have a hard time just getting on their feet in the first place. But once you make your first step, once you start doing your first stride, and you realize that you had that ability within you in the first place, not someone else telling you, but you recognizing it within yourself, it's calming, it's elating, it's so many good emotions at once, where you realize, you know what, there is something valuable to me, not to me, about me, that I am worth. There's something in me that I can contribute to the world, that the actions that I take matter, and I have a responsibility to use this the best way that I can. Because you know what? This is what's going to allow me to take care of my family. This is going to allow me to do something better for my friends. This is going to take me where I could dream of going. And it's the only one where you can trust, where you can have trust in others too. Because I'm sure you've all seen those power-hungry people, the one that embody villains of the story, the bullies. And it's always ruled by fear, because it all can fall apart at once. They may have power, but they have no stability. Versus all of this, when you make yourself into a hero, everything is something you've built and incorporated inside of you. It's not something someone gave to you. It's not something you took from someone. It's what you created. And no one can take that away from you. So, let's end it on that. What type of hero do you think you can create? So, that's it for the episode. If you liked it, subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Spreaker, anywhere you hear it, on YouTube. Please first it so I'm not the only one firsting my videos. And, well, give us a share. All of this is appreciated. I'd love to hear your feedback. I do think I put my best out here. I work on these ideas, and I really would love to see what you all think. Maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm right, and let's build something closer to the truth. Alright, I'll see you guys in the next one. I think Jordan's up next. We'll see what they have to come up with. And this is Steven Solorzano, signing off.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Life and Happiness Podcast, part of the GSMC Podcast Network. You can find the show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcasts on iTunes, Stitchers, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type in GSMC to find all of our shows. From the GSMC Podcast Network, from sex and relationships to health and wellness, life and happiness, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's episode of the Golden State Media Concepts Life and Happiness Podcast.